for another week. This is the 33rd week that we have gone live weekly for the weekly AMA Galaxy Radio. Today we have Quai Network on. I'll get you guys to correct me in a second, of course, but no, thank you guys for joining us today. For those that don't know the format, we have a guest on for an AMA portion. Sometimes that can take the whole hour. Sometimes it can take 30 to 40 minutes. Totally fine either way. We're going to be here the full hour no matter what. I will stay on and we'll chat about different things in our community and some Galaxy updates once the AMA portion either ends or the hour ends. So yeah, for any new listeners, appreciate you guys joining. For any of the previous guys that have been here week to week, make sure you guys claim your oat, and then afterwards go and claim your loyalty points. And I'll remind you guys towards the end as well, of course. So of course, yeah, let's just go ahead and dive right into it. We have some guests from Quai Network. We have, I just want to make sure I get your guys' name right. So I'll actually let you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves to everyone, and then just give me a bit of an intro, and a little bit of your background as well. And we'll start with I believe Rayleigh.
Raleigh there. Jump in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hello, can you hear me?
There you go.
There we go.
Hi, yeah. My name's Raleigh Moore. I am the
Okay.
Chief Marketing Officer of Dominant Strategies, which is the development company for Quai Network. So I'm leading the charge on all things marketing and branding for Quai Network. Thanks for having me. I joined Dominant Strategies last May, and prior to that, I was the head of brand for a lifestyle company called Onnit that we scaled up to doing about 150 million in revenue before we got acquired by Unilever, which is one of the biggest CPG brands on the planet, actually. So if you walk up and down the grocery store, about 35-40% of what you see is owned by Unilever. So that was exciting, but happy to be here and super excited to be partnering with Galxe.
Thank you. No, I appreciate it. And a quick question, yeah. So is it the Unilever? Is that like a more of a private brand, like a sort of like a how like the food companies own all the restaurants or something like that? Because I've never seen it before
Exactly.
myself. Ah, okay,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
that makes more
yeah.
sense.
So Unilever is one of let's call it 5 or 6 brands that any consumer packaged good you see at any Walgreens or
Mhm.
grocery store or anything, they own that. So like Ben and Jerry's, Dove soap, I could keep going, but they own
Cool.
all those things, and they're just sort of masters at global distribution for physical products.
No, no, that's cool. Yeah, very interesting background. Thank you for that. Also, I love your PFP, by the way.
Oh,
Great
thanks.
movie. It's my favorite version of him, so it's very cool.
I,
Um,
I I agree. It's the Bane's the best part of that movie.
100%. But yeah, thank you for the intro. We'll go right on to Alan. Same question, same intro. Give us a bit about yourself and a bit about your background as well.
Sure. Yeah. Alan from Quai Network here. So co-founder of the project since about 2018 is when we got started. So myself and Dr. K and a few other people, mainly around the University of Texas at Austin. So it was a research project, and we got together around the idea of scaling blockchains and what does it look like to create a public blockchain that's permissionless, censorship resistant, but also can scale up to 50K TPS. So the core ethos is really trying to be a last mover in this space and take all the learnings from other projects in order to create something that is awesome. And we think we're getting really close to that. Myself at the time, I was a student at UT, so I was studying computer science, was always super interested in blockchain research, was really
Mhm.
diving in from a first principles perspective on how to make these things happen. And then went after graduation, started my job full time as a software engineer at Apple, and then was there for about a year and a half before leaving Apple, picking up the research again and taking that full time, getting it from an idea in an incubation into something that is a full fledged launched industry implementation. And yeah, we've been doing that for about 2 years now, full time. We did our seed round last year. We're backed by Polychain Capital and Alumni Ventures. They've been great supporters of the project, and we've been building up a great community. So partnering people like yourself with Galxe and really getting the train going for mainnet launch is going to be exciting. And I appreciate you having us today, and glad to share my story.
No, thank you. I'm glad you obviously decided to work with us as well. It's what we love to do, right? So, and I appreciate the nice words. And yeah, 2 years is it's a long grind, honestly. It really doesn't feel like it when you realize it's 2 years. I've been with Galaxy for 2 years now too, so
Nice.
it's been yeah, so it's almost 2 years, getting close, but yeah, I feel like 3 months feels like a year in crypto to me. So not sure if you
Yeah,
guys
no,
have
it's
it.
it's
Yeah, it's pretty similar.
it's 2 years is like it goes quick, and the crazy part is like we didn't realize. Of course, things are difficult, right? But you never realize how hard it is going to be when you get started. So we found a mountain. We're going up the mountain,
Yeah,
and we're gonna just keep getting up to the top.
aiming for that peak. No, I respect that. It's tough. It's difficult, but that's why we're here. We love the difficult things because it makes us better and it makes us grow. Um, so yeah, let's kind of dive into Quai Network, or is it Quai or Quai? Quai, I believe.
Quai. So yeah, I
Quai.
saw
Okay.
someone asked a question in the chat.
Oh, we lost him. How do we lose Alan?
Is Al there?
We lost him. Inviting him back up. Sometimes Discord can be a bit weird. Can you tell him to he has an invite back up. He just has to rejoin the stage.
I think I just saw him.
Yeah, I see him too.
There
Go.
he
My
is.
back.
There we
Sorry,
He's
go.
back.
I tried. Yeah, I tried to click the chat and then I clicked drop. But on Quai, yeah, so
Oh,
it's Quai
sorry.
Network, and uh, someone had asked in the chat what the significance is, but we've actually, sort of crafted it from a myriad of meanings. So the first one is Quai, and it Kuai, which is the colloquial term for buck in Mandarin Chinese. So it's a form of money saying in Mandarin, and
Oh,
we've sort of adapted the Kuai and just put a Q on the front. It sounds the same, Quai. And the
yeah.
second is if you're in, France or Europe or Switzerland, you'll see the Quai is like a port or, close to the sea. So it's like a loading station or also,
Mm.
like side area to the ocean. And so that being like a platform. So another sort of saying in that language. And then the third being fast also in Mandarin. So we like to consider Quai being a fast money platform, sort of in the short sense of the word.
No, that's cool. I like that there's so much to the name. A lot of the time, I find that a lot of projects will be like, this is just like fun and it fits into the space kind of thing. But when there's a lot of like little quirks behind the name, I like that a lot. That's fun. That's actually the person who asked that question. He's actually our best question asker, so you can prepare to see probably a few more from him as well. Thanks for the question, Alex Cat.
I'll keep my eye on the chat a little bit. I know we had some questions planned, but also I think that's just a fun one to get started with, to get familiar
No,
with
of course,
the
yeah, no,
project and kind of tee it up in that regard.
no, I completely agree. Pretty much, we do obviously have some prepared, of course, and we'll go over those and kind of through the inner workings, everything. But also, yeah, we do have some great question askers in the chat, so I might throw some in, and you can also feel free to interject, and if you want to answer any of these right away too, not a problem. So yeah, first, and obviously, I might as well ask you to explain some things that maybe not common knowledge, like terminology to more intricate things to the users here. As not everybody is super tech oriented. But yeah, please, could you give us your kind of best intro to Quai Network?
Sure. So the way I like to describe Quai at a first glance is we want to be as decentralized as Bitcoin, as composable as Ethereum, and as fast as Solana. In the essence, that sort of sums up the blockchain trilemma. And without getting too technical, there's this bounds of physical limitations that are defining the blockchain space as we know it today. And with Quai being a new layer one project, we want to try to optimize the performance of blockchains in this space. And of course, knowing classic trade-offs, you have to fall somewhere in that trilemma. But what we've actually done is we've operated in a new sort of paradigm or a new sort of technological trade-off in which we've introduced a few key concepts. And so for a layer one blockchain, you really have to think of it, as the main platform for all the applications to be built on. And these trade-offs define user experience, they define how people want to use the platform, and they define sort of the longevity of the project as well, because blockchains are really hard to modify when you launch them. And so if you're starting a new layer one or a new layer two, you really have to think about these things, because down the line, a hard fork is extremely difficult. And, not to say that haven't happened before, but, they can divide the community, they can cause misalignment, and a bunch of other problems that are generally bad.
Yeah.
And so when you look at what we're doing with Quai, is we're again optimizing for that throughput while maintaining decentralization in the layer one itself. And we do that by having horizontal sharding, so execution-based sharding. We do that by having a process called merged mining, and we do that by having a new novel consensus mechanism called proof of entropy minima, which essentially is the idea of instantaneous fork resolution in a hierarchical proof of work blockchain. And we can have that based off of a very, not simple, because it's actually pretty, and I won't go too far on Poem to get started. We can get into it a little later, but essentially it allows us to have consensus that isn't bounded by time, and it allows blocks to be chosen sort of in a style that allows them to be instantaneously resolved. So it improves finality, it improves latency, and it improves the way for us to introduce more of these horizontal shards into that execution environment. On the project itself, people have been following us for about a year now. The community's gotten relatively large, so we're approaching mainnet, getting to mainnet after our testnets. That's the main priority. When you're developing these systems, you have to be very, very thorough, just because, again, as I said, hard forks are bad for the community, but also you're building financial software, and we take that very seriously. So ramping up to mainnet, getting through our next 3 testnets. Our next testnet publicly is announced for September 19th. So that'll be an incentivized testnet for people to participate, mine Quai, build dApps, and use the tools. So I think that part's going to be exciting. And outside of that as well, great team. So pretty small team of everyone. We have about 20 on our team right now, but always looking for skilled people to join the mission.
Yeah, I feel like once you get to like kind of more of like a full launch, and things do get even more exciting. You'll need a lot of there'll be a lot of new team members joining. It happened for us as well, where it was like, oh wow, it's going fast now. We we definitely need some more people. No, that's very interesting. Would you mind covering sort of you mentioned merge mining and horizontal sharding. Would you mind giving sort of just like a little explanation of what those two things are?
Yeah, totally. So that gets us, I said I wouldn't go too deep into Poem, but that gets us into that next sort of step. So merge mining is not a new idea. It's been around since about 2012. Same with sharding. And these two technological philosophies and how they're applied to blockchain, again, have their own merit. So merge mining actually has been implemented in Dogecoin and Litecoin. So Dogecoin's actually merge mined on top of Litecoin, and Namecoin and Bitcoin. So these are things that Satoshi was talking about in Bitcoin form in 2011. Again, not new. The idea of merge mining is combining these blockchains and mining them simultaneously. So you're reusing hash rate to secure both of these blockchains. And you can do that by having rewards, or the mining rewards, for each of these applied to the person that is mining both of those chains. And also you can have that dictated in sort of a general consensus applied to both of these chains as well. The hard part about classical merge mining in the sense is these two blockchains, say in the case of Dogecoin and Litecoin, have different tokens, and they have different philosophical sort of economics, right? Like the Litecoin community is different from the Dogecoin community, but also, their supply is different. They have different sort of, at the end of the day, they're just merged mined together. So they share some similarities and they share some reuse of security, but at a high level, they're not too similar. When you look at combining that philosophy of merge mining with sharding, sharding allows you to actually have the same token across these different shards. It allows you to increase the throughput by creating more block space and having more people be able to submit transactions across these shards. and it allows you to essentially, again, take that old idea. Sharding's been around since about 2014. It was in the original Ethereum roadmap, and you can go ahead and create that new form of consensus by combining those. So that's the high level on sharding and merge mining.
Mhm.
Sharding has been attempted by a lot of different blockchains. We're unique in the fact that we do execution sharding rather than just sort of parallel execution. So some people will do parallel execution and call it sharding. That's not really good use of the term. Some people will also do some sort of sharding that isn't really applicable to throughput. So they'll shard it and then it'll be just as slow as a non-sharded blockchain. Again, we're taking a form of approach that actually utilizes the full compute and processing on the computer. So being able to run multiple shards on different computers in disparate locations. And then some people will also just get one big blockchain and not change anything and say this is good enough, like Bitcoin. So we're really trying to optimize on all cylinders.
I agree. And I think it is, it's pretty easy for, I guess people just in general to get close, right? And then just use the phrase, obviously. Um, but I appreciate the level of seriousness that you guys give, obviously, using these terms and what they are, and, to the fullest extent. Um, and now you did answer a few questions in the chat with that response and did kind of lean into another question that we kind of wanted to cover, just kind of covering the uniqueness of Quai Network compared to those around you that may be doing what you're trying to do. And so at the same time, this is kind of mixes into the audience questions that were kind of around the how fast you are, et cetera. You mentioned one of the things that makes you unique. What else about Quai Network kind of stands out above the rest? And how do you manage to stay faster than everyone else?
Yeah, I mean, I talked a bit about that last mover advantage earlier, but that's a pretty fun thing to sit and be able to look at implementations and what went right, what didn't go right,
Mhm.
and the chain itself can achieve this scale because of proof of work. Proof of work is an objective finality that essentially allows the energy of the world to be put into something that essentially makes it more robust. And with that objective approach to proof of work, you can bring in these shards. And it's been a really tough problem to solve in an industry because everyone says, well, how do I shard and scale a blockchain? And you get a lot of different approaches. So one will be like I said earlier, for Bitcoin, they're going to make a big blockchain, not change it, and you're good and we're happy with it because blockchains are slow and they should be stupid. There's other approaches like Ethereum where they say, we'll get a bunch of layer twos and they'll settle data onto Ethereum, and that's fine because the gas costs are going to rise and we want everyone to have expensive fees, and the data is only going to be the thing stored on Ethereum.
Yeah.
Then there's the other approaches such as Cosmos or Avalanche or Polkadot that say we'll create these other blockchains and they'll be considered somewhat L1s on the sense that they're tied to these other blockchains, but they really are disparate and misaligned, sort of a hodgepodge network of similarly L2s. So they're not really L1s in any sense there. And for us, we can create that scale because we're not creating new tokens on top of Quai outside of smart contracts, of course, but the actual mechanism of scale is still the Quai token. So everything that is native to that tokenomic plan, everything that is native to the sharding approach, and we can grow and create that block space without misaligning incentives. And the way we can do that is through that sharding and merged mining. And so, someone in the comments sort of said, how do you achieve the infinite scale? And that infinite scale is done through the coordination of those shards through proof of work. And that is a really key part into how we can actually coordinate these blockchains, is because the objectivity in coordination is very important. And I talked a little bit earlier about removing time. So taking time out of consensus. And if you have time, that introduces subjectivity because clocks and computers aren't precise. People with differing opinions on how things should be processed, hard to coordinate. And also, if you introduce any sort of redundancy, if you don't introduce any sort of redundancy there, it gets really messy really fast. If you don't have something that everyone can look at and say, this is the answer. And for proof of entropy minima, the way we can do that is by removing entropies from the system and having proof of work be the thing that allows people to coordinate. And the poem consensus is essentially trying to minimize the entropy. And if you think about an example with, like, say, generating a seed phrase, you want to maximize the entropy because you don't want anyone to know it. But in this sort of blockchain system with something that's public and agreeable, and you want everyone to come to consensus on it, you want everyone to look at it and say that's the right thing to choose, you want to minimize that entropy. And we do that by actually coordinating based off of the block hashes and by the amount of leading zeros in an instantaneous block. And then that approach is iterated, and it's actually done in a multiplicative process across the chains and the blocks that have been built on top of them in order to achieve essentially a new type of longest chain rule, which is similar to the classical Nakamoto consensus.
Interesting. Wow. So okay, sorry. Yeah, I'm just making sure I'm getting it right. No, no, okay. No, I think I got it. Thank you. Um, you take a lot of different aspects from so many different areas in the process. Like, how long would you say has it been something that you've kind of been working on over a long period of time to get to this point of taking all these different pieces? Or was that the whole idea of utilizing all these different things kind of from the start, or was it something you sat on for a long time?
Well, that's a good question, and I know I just info dumped, so
No, no,
interject
that's
and
okay.
touch back on whatever we need to. But it's been a long journey, as I said earlier. So 2 years since I left Apple, essentially, and came back
Yeah.
and started working on the project. And since about 2018, actually, it was more of a research project. So, like I said, we were at UT Austin. We were just kind of tinkering and saying, well, there's something here. There's an idea, and we want to explore it. Well, how do we do that? So we get some groups together. We get a lab together. We work on it. We go back. I had school, so I was taking classes also at the time, and other people had full-time jobs, and our professors had classes to teach. So it was really us on, like, by the end of the week. I'm sorry, there's sitting outside, so there's bugs and stuff.
No,
But
no problem. I could hear it. I could hear it. It's okay. It's okay.
cool. But we had classes and normal things to get back to. So it'd be like Saturday night. Like, what are we doing? Either we're going to the bar, or we're going to go work on the blockchain. We're going to go do some research. And oftentimes it was just us essentially tinkering with how to put these ideas together. And we came to a really good conclusion in that we could. And we published papers, and we really pushed the industry, I think, forward, especially in Austin. And we were also having meetups and really trying to educate people on how blockchain works, what it is, and how they could benefit from it, and how the world could benefit from sound decentralized money. And from about 2018 was when we started. 2019 was the first paper that we published, called Block Reduce, which is the application of sharding and merge mining and topological distributed groups. And then 2020, the group continued to work on it. We received a National Science Foundation grant from
Very cool.
from
Congrats
the
on
U.S.
that.
government. So that was SBIR phase 1, and then just kept iterating on it. Like I said, went to Apple, so either a mistake or the time to learn in a big company, one of the two. But it was just too exciting to not be working on it. So then I came back. But yeah, it's been about 5 years in total, probably. And I think right now it's of course, the closest we've been to getting the core thing finalized. But
No, no, it
it's been
sounds
a
like
long
it's
time
taken
coming.
a
So it's been
while.
fun.
Yeah. I mean, when it's something you love though, like that, like it could take all the time in the world, right? When you have that
Right.
end goal. No, thank you. That's a great explanation. I appreciate that. And yeah,
Of
obviously
course.
we might touch back on a few things, of course, as we go through the upcoming questions as well as some from the chat. A quick question that I think is pretty interesting that I saw from Alex earlier. Quai Network claims that its mining process is up to 10,000 times more energy efficient per transaction compared to other networks like Bitcoin, of course. How is this level of efficiency achieved? And what metrics are used to measure it. So a lot of people usually don't ask about, obviously energy efficiency. So I'm just curious on that as well. If you have that info for us.
Yeah. So I'm an energy maxi. I think the world should be energy abundant, in that we should do everything we can to maximize our energy production. And the way you have to do that is by incentivizing energy consumption to have max net energy production. And I think, of course, across those energy sources, you have wind, solar, hydrothermal, uh, a mix of all sorts of renewables that are emerging, nuclear, and other types. And when you look at energy efficiency, when it comes to blockchain, you have to sort of take it into different approaches where we can either use as little energy as possible because we want the chain to be socially defined by consensus, a la proof of stake, or we can utilize the objective nature of energy and apply that with proof of work. Bitcoin, us, other proof of work chains, of course, take that approach. The way we can achieve energy efficiency here is by increasing that throughput and increasing the amount of transactions. And so net, of course, we want to be comparable to Bitcoin in regards to robustness and decentralization, because as you saw, or as everyone sees with Bitcoin, it is proven to be robust and resilient to sort of geopolitical affairs. China bans Bitcoin mining. All of the Bitcoin miners move to Texas. That's a known fact.
Yeah.
We've known
Yeah.
that happens. And for us, we really appreciate the fact that proof of work gives that ability to be resilient. And people can go tap into energy anywhere, and it incentivizes people to go tap into energy. So whether you're doing Bitcoin mining on volcanoes or you're using some solar farms out in West Texas, we think that's great. It stabilizes the grid. It goes and actually creates the incentive for people to get out and use those renewable energy sources. And then if you're using those renewable energy sources, you can actually connect them back to the grid when it makes the most sense to do so. And energy efficiency wise, there's only really a small amount of renewables you need on a blockchain to make it either carbon neutral or carbon negative. And Bitcoin right now, I believe, has about 1 to 2% of people doing methane mitigation. That's a whole other avenue we can get into, but essentially methane mitigation and methane mining is tarping a landfill and taking that tarped methane and putting it into a generator. Once you got it on the generator, you can power anywhere from 3 to 5 megawatt site, which can do about also 400 miners. So that number, again, 400 miners out of a system that is potentially thousands, is a pretty small percentage, but that's enough to make the blockchain actually carbon negative because of the impacts methane have on the environment. Methane being about 35 times more potent than CO2 in the atmosphere when it comes to greenhouse gas emissions. So just like that, those kind of stats we keep at the top of our mind, and we're always really focused on being extremely energy efficient. But again, efficiency is a small part, and it's a price you have to pay for having sound money, and having the money and the incentive in place will essentially allow everything else to come again from first principles when you think about it that way. But yeah, that's again on the number two, you can say X amount more efficient than Bitcoin just because of throughput as well. So per transaction is a similar way of thinking about it.
No, I like that. I think it's an interesting point that a lot of people ignore, honestly, is the energy consumption discussion. What these things do environmental wise when it comes to energy consumption, what energy we're using. And even myself, for the longest time, I never really thought about it. It was just sort of something I never paid attention to. I feel like a lot of people, as we just kind of live our lives. We just recycle the best we can and not really think about it. And that's partially why we have many obviously problems, I would say, at this point. Um, and yeah, it was funny just to know it. A big reason why I started thinking about it was when I was in crypto and really kind of diving into it. And this was during obviously like the hot period where everything was kind of crazy. And I would talk to people that didn't know about crypto and had obviously heard about it just due to the news. And, one of the big discussions was like people were mad about what we were doing due to energy consumption and pollution, et cetera. Um, so yeah, it definitely opened my eyes a lot to that as well. So I appreciate you going into the details on that. I find a lot of people are just completely unbeknownst to it at all. So it is a very good discussion to have for sure. So yeah, thank you for that, Alan.
Yeah, of course.
So we have a question that segues into my next question, actually. So I'll shout out Miss Angel in the chat. Thank you for that. And I appreciate you guys participating and being so active with the questions today. You guys are going nuts in the chat. And I believe we have quite actually a few people hopping in from your community as well. So just want to
Nice.
give a little quick shout out. Thank you guys in the chat for answering any questions for the mods from Quai, as well as those that are asking questions today. So Miss Angel is curious on kind of an overview of the Iron Age testnet, its significance in the development and progress. And then, my question, obviously, to piggyback off Miss Angel, is, what kind of point are we at in the testnet schedule? Is how many are we going to see leading towards the end of the year? And uh, how fast will this ramp up?
Yeah, great question. So the Iron Age is extremely monumental to us because as we've gone through the research, we've had to take this idea and put it into code and put it into that robust and secure implementation
Mhm.
that we believe is trusted and we believe the community will have faith in as well and have that assurance that we're really building something great because we believe we are and we want everyone to think the same as well. We've gone through rigorous testing internally, so we've actually started with internal dev nets that we've been running for about the past 2 months. And we've scaled up our infrastructure. It's that kind of stuff in a startup where you're like, oh shit, I just got slapped with a $100,000 GCP bill. And of course, that's a hyperbolous example, but that kind of stuff where you're like just iterating too fast and you can go and see all the software run, you can see all the instances run. And in the back of your mind, you have to think like, wow, this is awesome. There's these many computers all around the world that are coordinating in this way that hasn't been done before. That is unique and that is freaking awesome. And the Iron Age testnet will be the public being able to permissionally join and leave this network as they choose. And the beautiful thing about a blockchain is if you really think about it, the way it evolves over time, and this might be super meta, but the way it evolves over time is nodes consistently join and leave, and this thing just continually evolves. And it doesn't matter how or when or what you're running, as long as you're downloading the blocks, validating the transactions, and executing that software. I can run a blockchain node for a month, or I can run it for the whole time it's been running, and that's a beautiful thing. And the Iron Age testnet will allow people to join, mine, participate, develop, engage, all of the things.
Mhm.
And really, since prior to testnets, we've revamped all of Quai, the core code. So we've stripped it all out. We made it as fast and as, from our standpoint, easy to read as possible, because that's a really nice thing about having good code is it's easy to read and it's easy to explain. And we want that to be part of the Iron Age as well, where people can join the GitHub and contribute and create that actual community, and having people that can be interested enough to contribute in an open source manner. That's another piece that we think is really important to
Love that.
having something permissionless. Yeah, being open source and pushing that ethos. That's what we want out of the community as well. So when it comes to projects and people that are building dApps, well, we want you to have an open source repo. We want you to have a website. We want you to sort of think from those beliefs as well, because that just benefits everybody if you create something really interesting. And the moat shouldn't be being closed source. And beyond that, the next testnets, in it roadmap wise, we have two more following the Iron Age. And the point of them is to really finalize the sort of auxiliary pieces of Quai. So the core piece being Poem, being the consensus of sharding and merge mining, that's what we're testing this Iron Age. The remaining pieces is really up for us to figure out the bells and whistles that we want before mainnet. And so is that going to be designing the smart contract system? We want it to be EVM compatible. We are EVM compatible with Solidity, but what does that look like in our design? Does that mean we're WASM based? Are we an eWASM flavor? Or is there potentially something we want to do with ZK and privacy? Again, those are open questions, and we're still looking internally and saying, well,
Figuring it
how do
out.
we take that approach? Right. Because at the end of the day, once you launch Quai, you can't just be like, all right, we're going to take out the EVM. Like, no, like that just isn't really doable from a launched blockchain perspective. There are people that have done it, and there have been people that have added the EVM. But the main thing you really need from that approach is just Solidity compatibility, people to deploy and build these protocols. And then beyond that, we need, of course, everyone asks about tokenomics, but finalizing tokenomics. When we say we're working on tokenomics, we're not just talking about putting numbers on a pie chart and saying this is how much goes to testnet incentives or this is how much goes to the team. No, that's not what we're talking about in regards to tokenomics at all. What we're actually talking about is how do we utilize proof of work, create a form of money that is potentially tied to the growth rate of the network, or potentially to the price of energy, or to the sort of stability of energy in the system. And we're looking at running those algorithms. We're looking at running the calculations on that. What does it look like to emit in regards to your hash rate growth, or sort of do a type of supply mission that's unique to Quai, rather than just being like, okay, we're going to be Bitcoin and every 4 years we'll have. We don't know
Yeah.
why we do that, but that's just what we do. And similar to other protocols like Monero that have a tail mission because they are proof of work and they need that miner incentive long term. But what does a tail mission look like, and what way is that implemented over time in a logarithmic or in a sort of linear fashion? And
Yeah.
those are the questions we're answering. That'll likely get tested in the 4th testnet. And then the 5th testnet is basically, okay, we're good. We think we have all of the features we want implemented, but let's do one last testnet just to ensure that nothing goes awry ahead of mainnet. So that's the timeline.
No, of course. No, and I really it's very refreshing. I like the seriousness that you give to every question and every piece. I appreciate the nod to the pie chart. That's such a funny one. It's so easy. Yeah, you're right. It is honestly a lot of people will ask that question and not realize that it can go so much further than just a pie chart where X goes where, right? And it is important. So, um,
Yeah, I mean, because at the end of the day, if we do it in our
yeah,
approach, the pie chart might not even be relevant
yeah,
because
exactly.
we can design a system that people can control the net ending based off of growth. And again, this is all super preliminary and it's just the start, and I'm just riffing on some of the ideas that we wrote. But
Of course.
if you can create a token that actually is incentivizing people to get it as wide as possible and as large as possible for the project, because it's going to influence the way that the token's used, and then also essentially giving people the proper allocation in regards to that energy production and that energy consumption and utilizing the chain. So I think there's a really beautiful way in which this all kind of tunnels down, and then it also relates back to Poem and the way that we can actually apply entropy and all of these, and then just having it be based on that. There's just a few simple formulas that actually sort of ebb and flow throughout a lot of these things. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's cool to see. And of course, you can tell I get pretty excited about it, but
No,
there's a
I
few
can
other
appreciate
pieces
that.
too. Yeah, there's a few rabbits in the hat that we're gonna have for some of these features on Quai that are all related to utilizing the entropy and utilizing the way that this kind of tunnels down.
No, I agree. And yeah, just the piece you mentioned about, obviously you can make a pie chart, you can make a graph, etc. And it might not even be that way down the line. I completely agree. And then a lot of people just got very like stuck in the standard, I would say, of like, here's this project, here's what the token does, here's where the amounts go, here's the roadmap, done. But it's so much more than that at the end of the day. If you like go through the process, like so many things change, so many things tweak, ideas change, outcomes change. Like it's so tough to give like a concrete image of what a person wants to see and have it be accurate and have it make sense. So yeah, it is tough. Yeah, and there is so much more to it than just obviously the images we see and what we put out in many people's minds coming together. So yeah, it's a crazy process, I guess, is what I'm shortening it up to.
No, totally, and
Um,
that's why we say we need. How long does it take? Takes a long time to
it's a
build a good
very,
system, but
very
we're
fast.
really close to giving people the ability to come in and look at that and look at the hard work, and I think
Yeah.
that part's cool. So at some point, you got to stop going from research, and you got to get it out there, and this is one of those milestones that we're going to be able to make that conversion.
No, I completely agree. Um, and yeah, there's many sleepless nights that go into it for sure in that process. Um, so we talked a bit about the test net, of course, kind of covered, the different things you're going to be working on in the test net, things people can test out, questions that are going to be answered. Now, at the same time, this is a incentivized test net. So I was wondering if you could cover the specific activities, tasks that will be incentivized during this test net and kind of the details on that process.
Yeah. So as I said earlier, the primary thing that we want to test out is the consensus. So running Poem in a distributed way. So the first and foremost thing that we're going to be rewarding is actually mining on the network. And that's the most objective and easiest thing to look at, because we can say, your address mined these blocks. There you go. Done. And we utilize a mechanism of proof of work. And our hash function is called propel, so programmatic proof of work. It is an
Yeah.
adaptation of Ethash, and it was actually on the Ethereum proof of work roadmap. So the people that were in that camp, they said we want to evolve Ethash and make it look like propel and implement this into our systems. The reason why it's a better extension of Fhash is because it actually adapts more of the calls to the GPU, and it invokes those in a way that is more sort of intensive on the GPU itself. So if you were to design an ASIC, it would have to essentially look like a GPU, is what ProgPal allows you to do. Fhash is very similar to that. But again, propel just invokes more of the individual calls. We
Mhm.
have open source miners for NVIDIA and AMD, and those are in our GitHub. They've come a long way. You can do pool mining on the testnet, but we don't encourage it just because pool mining allocation may not be converted or sort of honored if you go connect to some random pool and you're mining. That might be a bad idea. So we actually do encourage people to run nodes. Mining is sort of the proxy for running a node just because we can actually look at mining. And we have incentives that will be or have posted in regards to the allocations split between the mining and the other sort of incentivizations. The other ones after mining would be sort of more subjective and looking at dApps and tools and really anything people want to build. We want to go out and really sort of push that forward where even if you don't see something that we've explicitly said, we encourage people to build it because we can likely go back and be like, dude, yeah, this is awesome. Like, let's do some allocation for you just building a sweet project or doing a grant through the foundation and doing a grant for people that are part of the Genesis program or that want to apply to the grants program. So we want people to be creative. The short answer is we have predefined incentives for that. The usage incentives are not as well defined just because those are harder to track and they're also harder to
Can take time.
do. Yeah, well, they're also harder to look at and say, this isn't just spam, right? This isn't just people just submitting a ton of transactions. We want it to be legit, real usage. And of course, on a testnet like this, like maybe that's a good thing if we just have people just blasting away transactions. But we don't want that to skew the rewards, and we don't want that to skew the way people actually contribute. Because if you're a meaningful user and you go and you do a couple transactions, you have a cup of coffee, you go buy some NFTs, or you go do some things on the testnet, but someone else is actually spending day in day out farming all of the rewards, that might not be the best thing for the users come mainnet. So we're conscious of those things, and I know of course other blockchains have had this problem as well, and other people that have launched programs have had this problem, but we are starting with those, and then we just want to get creative on what people can contribute.
No, I completely agree. And that question of finding I guess the level of user is something that we've it's been like a passion of ours for the longest time, is to make a system that can help you find those users, right? And it's tough, it's difficult. We've gone through that a lot as well, where yeah, I mean, yeah, like I think about a year ago, the credentials we had then, the system we had then, we had many campaigns, activities, things like that, events where, there were like we were teaming up with partners and a lot of users were participating, but we had to go through that process of figuring out like, oh, these users are just spamming to try for reward, right?
Right.
There's not proper interaction. It's more so just kind of like fake interaction. People just they want the money, and obviously stress testing is nice, but it needs to go further, right? Um, and it will continue on that goal, of course. As obviously, the next kind of sort of questions go right into that, talking about the rewards program, et cetera, what you guys are doing with Galaxy. So, but yeah, no, it's tough, and I hope that we can be that system for you guys as well to help you find those power users.
Yeah.
And I
So
think
far, so good.
we have a few in our chat. Honestly, some of these I'm reading the chat obviously as I'm chatting with you. We have some people from your server that are so proactive in answering questions, discussion. You guys are great. So I'd say out of the 33 of these that I've done, your community has been the most active in our chat so far. So
Oh yeah,
um,
shout out to
a,
Quai.
a lot of the
Shout out
time
to
they'll
Quai
just
community.
listen in,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah, shout out.
Big
yeah,
shout out Pavel, shout out to Kiri, all the mods, and then there's a lot of people that are super knowledgeable on the space and that want to contribute, and that's the kind of stuff that we're looking for. So shout out to
mhm.
everyone that's here and paying attention.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate a lot of the quiet mods and other people hopping in. Super awesome to see you guys. Please stick around. Feel free. We do lots of fun stuff around here. Yeah, join in, ask some questions, etc. If you want to chat too, always feel free to reach out. Not a problem. But yeah, let's go ahead and dive into sort of the a bit between the two of our projects. So when it comes to obviously you guys working with us, kind of would you let us know what that initial process was, kind of how that got started, and sort of what was the first kind of campaign you started rewards program, and how did that go about?
Yeah, Raleigh might
Yeah,
actually I might tee that up for
Yeah, I'd
you.
love to. Yeah, absolutely. So we launched our own kind of earn social media rewards program ourselves, and underestimated the amount of engagement it would get, and therefore the amount of support from our end, and not only from a customer support standpoint, but also like a developer running a
Mhm.
front end, running a back end, et cetera, et cetera. There's services that does this. We are building a blockchain, as Alan's been saying. So that is our core focus. So all of our energy should be towards building that. And we were just starting to have a lot of our energy be pulled into essentially building from scratch what you all do yourselves. And so a member of your team, Jake, I don't know if I should say his name or not, but Jake.
Of course, it's Jake. Yeah.
I met him at I can't recall what conference, but we met at a conference, and he saw SM Rewards and was really enthusiastic about it, asking a lot of questions about the success, the pain points, et cetera, et cetera. That's how we got linked up with Galxe, and he essentially said, you know, we can do a lot of this already, and we would be willing, seeing the success you've had with it, we would be willing to um, implement some of the features that are missing from our dashboard to help you guys
Hmm.
do all the things you want to do from an engagement standpoint, a learning standpoint, et cetera, et cetera. So it's been a long conversation and a lot of work from our end as well as yours, sorry, to implement this transition from our SM rewards to Galaxy. So currently, all the rewards for us in Galaxy are just learning, engaging, joining the community, just getting your ecosystem into ours.
Hmm.
But as we approach testnet, as Alan touched on, when we launch testnet, the first incentives are going to be miner and builder based, and then throughout the testnet, we're going to do some drops that are much more user focused. That we're still trying to work out with our devs as well as your backend on how we can track those power users and not just those spam users, like you mentioned,
Yeah, exactly.
for different user-based transactions. So it will be heavily user incentivized. We just haven't announced those specifics because we're trying to figure out the best experience, not just for what we want to test, but for the people that want to participate. So it's not, clanky or clunky, and
Yeah.
it's not just spamming the network.
Oh yeah, of course. And we want that's what we want as well with obviously, what we're building, right? Is are those kind of campaigns, those kinds of processes. And yeah, no, I've seen I haven't obviously been involved in these chats, but I've been in the chat and I've seen the many messages you guys have sent back and forth, working out this process. And it's so funny. A lot of the time it's always when ask, how we got acquainted, etc. It's always Jake. Jake's a great guy. So it's funny that you mentioned him.
Yeah,
Um,
he is. He really is. Like,
I'm
he's been
guessing it was
very.
Austin, probably where he met you guys. I'm guessing.
It might
Is
have
it
been Singapore, actually, Token
interesting?
2029 last year. Maybe.
Okay.
It might have been
Okay,
right
yeah.
after that. I can't recall which conference, but it was a conference.
I
But,
think, yeah,
for
definitely
nearly a
Singapore then.
year now, yeah, nearly a year now, we've been, we met up with him to discuss more at ETH Denver, at Consensus in Austin. So
Yeah.
we've been, yeah, as you said, heavily engaged. And I think the reason for that is we've built such, as you mentioned, and as we mentioned before, like we have a very active, passionate community.
Yeah,
And
100%.
so they've helped us so much along the way that we didn't want to just pick something and say, yeah, this is the new one. This is the new thing we're looking at. So we had to
Mhm.
do our own diligence to make sure we were giving our community the best partner and the best experience possible. And we just thought that was y'all.
No, I agree. It's what we have to do. It's simple when you really think about it. It's what we have to aim for, right? And yeah, I'm glad that you guys, took that chance with us then. And it's been such a engaged conversation. So I know they're the guys on our side are hard workers. So um, we'll do our best for you in that sense. So when it comes to these obviously campaigns that have obviously been released, the three so far, and what you guys are working on going forward, and we have our loyalty points as well. Kind of, would you be able to go over what those loyalty points from the Quay space represent for users and how they can utilize those loyalty points going forward? Obviously, as they begin to earn more through the campaigns.
Yeah, so the points are going to be an aggregate system to that will lead to mainnet Quai at our
Mhm,
mainnet date. It's not going to be a one-to-one conversion. There'll be some sort of formula based off engagement and based off of participation because we
mhm.
can't anticipate that. So there'll be a point system. And like I said, as we get further into the testnet and get more applications built on chain and more partners, we want to bring partners. So we're working with a wallet called Koala, which we're going to announce tomorrow as an integration, and they want to do an NFT POAP reward for a giveaway type deal for engagement on the testnet. So as we get more partners onboarded, as we get more integration on our end through the testnet implemented, we're going to not just have the reward section, but we're going to start doing NFT POAP drops, and these will all sort of lead to mainnet rewards at our mainnet date. Not one to one, but there will be you'll earn rewards that will lead to mainnet Quai.
Ah, okay. So, and these will be oat drops, right? Like on our site, or sorry, did you say POAP as in like POAP site, or did you mean POAP but also mean oat? Just to be clear.
Oats.
Ah, okay,
Your
okay.
definition of it, the oat. Apologies.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, sorry.
it'll
No,
be
no worries, no worries. It's very common for it is essentially very similar. So not a problem at all. Just wanted to make sure so that there was no confusion to any listeners.
yeah. So
No, that's
essentially,
exciting.
oats all user based incentivization going forward
Yeah.
will be done through Galaxy up until mainnet. Essentially, is what we're saying. Whether that's
Okay,
rewards
cool. Perfect.
points
That's what we
or
want.
oats. Yeah.
Very
Yeah, I
exciting.
mean it's what you all do. As again, we're building a blockchain. We don't need to be running a rewards program, so we
Oh,
just find a
yeah.
good partner.
That's spreading yourself a bit thin having those two
Uh,
different pieces, right? So
yeah, you have no
Yeah,
idea.
no, you. It's like the thing where you're like you grow fast, and you're just like, I guess we got to do this now. So like we spent like I became like an expert on like Twitter APIs, and like for some reason I know way more about that system than I should. But
A
that,
same
hundred
here.
yeah,
percent. Yeah,
yeah.
I'm
our
not even tech oriented at all, and I know way too much now at this point. So I completely agree. But yeah, very exciting stuff going forward. I'm super excited to see these loyalty points be used in, obviously more creative ways. We try to do it ourselves. I find that it's such a tough thing for people to kind of get a hold of idea wise is, how to better incentivize users. Um, and yeah, it's something that we're gonna obviously continue to work on and grow over time. So appreciate you guys using the system and dedicating your time to this as well. Obviously, it's a lot easier than building the system yourself, of course, but yeah, and beyond that, I think we're pretty much close to the end of today. As we're kind of closing out, and we've covered the many different pieces. I just wanted to thank you guys for coming on. Before you guys head out, do you have any kind of final words for everyone today? Anywhere you want to guide them to get involved?
Yeah, I mean, from my end, Galaxy Radio episode 33. It's been a blast. We
Thank you.
are developing the Iron Age testnet September 19th. You can go to qu.ai, follow along Twitter. We've been growing, and we're excited to get the community engaged. And stay tuned for more information.
Very much agree.
Yeah, I mean, thank you. It's been great. This has been probably my favorite one of these I've done, actually. The best ran as
Thank
well.
you.
So thank you for that. Um, yeah, just like Alan said, Q.ai for the website. Join the server. I know they've been dropping links like crazy for it in the chat, so just go
Mhm.
find one of those to join. Follow us on Twitter. We have a lot of announcements between now and September 19th for different ways you can earn, engage, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to just keep surprise dropping a lot of fun along the way
Mhm.
and throughout the test net. So yeah, come join. And thank you, Kiri. Thank you, Pavel, and everyone in the community for being so active. This is great. And
Keyshore's
just
in there too.
be sure all of the mods, you guys are wonderful. And then also for my team, shout out Max and Judy for crushing the integration process. They worked really hard with y'all's team
Amazing.
to get this up and running.
No, thank you so much. I appreciate the kind words as well. It's funny. I'm glad you mentioned that. It's a lot more hard work than people realize to do some of these. And in the process, in doing AMAs and doing Twitter Spaces, it became like for myself kind of like a stale space, I would say. So with this, like, we just were like, we want to make this present, engaging. And I hope that for everyone listening that it was present and engaging. And I just want to thank you guys again for coming on and being awesome guests and giving these detailed explanations, going over these different topics. I learned so much in this process. So that's kind of one of the fun things for myself as well, as being someone who kind of, lived a lot of my life outside of the more tech areas. Getting into this has been such a learning experience. So it's been super fun in that aspect. So yeah, thank you guys. I appreciate it.
It's been great. Thank you again for having us.
Yeah.
Peace out.
Thank you.
Awesome. We'll see you
Bye,
guys
everyone.
and have a great one, guys.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, we're pretty much done. We've hit the hour. I'm gonna drop some links on my side before you guys disappear. Ilya, if you can help me out, just grab the Mission Web 3 and then grab the other link. I'll grab this one actually, no worries. Just grab the campaigns of the week and then grab the Mission Web 3. We'll do that. Guys, before you head out, obviously, of course, I have some links. The AMAs have been going a little bit longer this time, so it's not a problem, honestly. Like, these discussions have been great. Quai is awesome. I love these guys. Amazing chats, super fun. This was a very big learning experience. Super appreciative to everybody from the Quai Discord that hopped over. Stick around, guys. Feel free to hang out. Get involved in some campaigns, etc. Feel free to chat anything. Of course, I want to thank you guys for listening. I want you guys to check out the links that we're going to be dropping in the chat. Mission Web 3. You can also go to galxe.com, our regular website, and it's right there in the top, right on the hotbar. We got a big old button for Mission Web 3. I want you guys to give that a peek, give it a check. There's hundreds of thousands of participants already. This is something that took over a year to create and has a lot of people's blood, sweat, and tears put into it. So, guys, go give a check out of Web 3, Mission Web 3. Very exciting stuff. Go give that a peek for sure. I don't have enough time as we're obviously at the very end to cover the full details. So go give that a peek. And finally, last but not least, I'm going to drop with you guys a little just sneak preview tweet that we did the other day. Stay prepared, guys. 28th of August, 5 days away. Thank you so much for listening. Appreciate you all. Appreciate Quai Network. And I'll see you guys next time.